Marcus Thompson adjusted his worn baseball cap as he walked through the upscale downtown district, his 8-year-old daughter Emma's small hand clasped firmly in his. The evening air carried the scent of expensive restaurants and the distant hum of city traffic. Emma skipped beside him, her backpack bouncing with each step as she chattered about her school day. "Dad, can we get ice cream after dinner?" Emma asked, looking up at him with bright eyes that reminded him so much of her mother. Marcus smiled down at her, though the weight of unpaid bills in his wallet made the simple request feel heavy. "We'll see, sweetheart. Let's focus on getting some real food first." They had been walking for 20 minutes, heading toward the small diner where Marcus could afford to buy them both a decent meal. Money was tight since he lost his construction job 3 weeks ago, but he refused to let Emma see his worry. She had already been through enough changes in her young life. As they turned the corner onto 5th Street, Marcus noticed 3 men standing near a black sedan parked outside the gleaming glass building that housed several corporate offices. Something about their posture made him slow his pace. Years of experience had taught him to read body language, and these men were waiting for something or someone. The building's revolving doors spun, and a well-dressed man in his 50s emerged, checking his expensive watch. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his tailored suit probably cost more than Marcus made in 2 months when he was working. The man moved with the confident stride of someone used to being in charge. Marcus watched as the 3 men near. The sedan straightened up. The largest of the group, a muscular man with tattoos covering his forearms, nodded to his companions. They began moving toward the well-dressed man with purpose. "Dad, why did we stop?" Emma tugged at his hand, oblivious to the tension building ahead of them. Marcus felt his muscles tense as old instincts kicked in. The 3 men were now surrounding the businessman, who had stopped walking and was looking around nervously. Even from a distance, Marcus could see the fear in the older man's eyes as he realized he was trapped. "Stay right here, Emma," Marcus said quietly, guiding her behind a parked car. "Don't move until I come back, okay?" Emma's face scrunched with confusion, but she nodded. Marcus had used that tone before, and she knew it meant business. The confrontation was escalating quickly. Marcus could hear raised voices as the 3 men closed in on their target. The businessman was backing toward the building, but there was nowhere to go. The street was surprisingly empty for this time of evening, and the few pedestrians who noticed the situation were quickly walking away. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the car. His worn jeans and faded t-shirt made him look like just another working-class father, nothing special or threatening. But as he moved toward the group, something shifted in his posture. His walk became more controlled, more purposeful. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Marcus called out, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made all 4 men turn toward him. "Is there a problem here?" The tattooed man laughed, looking Marcus up and down dismissively. "This doesn't concern you, buddy. Keep walking." The businessman's eyes met Marcus's, and there was desperate hope there. "Please," he said quietly. "They want money." "A lot of money," added the second attacker, a thin man with greasy hair and nervous energy. "More than you could imagine, old man." Marcus moved closer, his hands relaxed at his sides. To anyone watching, he looked like an ordinary citizen trying to help. But his eyes were scanning the 3 men, noting their positions, their weapons, their weaknesses. "How much money are we talking about?" Marcus asked, as if genuinely curious. The third man, shorter but stocky with a mean expression, pulled back his jacket to reveal the handle of a gun, enough that we're willing to do whatever it takes to get it. Now walk away before you become part of the problem. Marcus glanced back toward where Emma was hiding, making sure she was still safe. Then he looked at the businessman, who was clearly terrified but trying to maintain some dignity. "Here's the thing," Marcus said, taking another step forward. "I can't just walk away from this. It's not who I am." The tattooed man stepped toward Marcus aggressively. "And who exactly are you supposed to be? Some kind of hero?" Marcus shrugged slightly. "Just a dad trying to teach his daughter right from wrong. And this," he gestured at the situation, "this is definitely wrong. What happened next would change everything for everyone involved. The businessman would learn that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. The three attackers would discover that appearances can be dangerously deceiving. And Emma would see her father in a completely new light. But none of them, not even Marcus himself, was prepared for how this single moment of decision would unravel secrets that had been buried for over a decade. The tattooed man made the first move, lunging forward with surprising speed for someone his size. But Marcus was no longer there. In one fluid motion, he sidestepped the attack and grabbed the man's extended arm, using his momentum against him. The attacker found himself spinning through the air before crashing hard into the side of the parked sedan. The sound of the impact echoed down the street, and the businessman's eyes went wide with shock. This wasn't what he had expected when the ordinary-looking father stepped in to help. The thin man with greasy hair pulled out a knife, its blade glinting under the streetlights. "You just made a big mistake, friend," he snarled, advancing on Marcus with the weapon raised. Marcus remained perfectly calm, his breathing steady as he watched the knife-wielding attacker approach. When the man thrust the blade forward, Marcus moved with precision that seemed almost impossible. He caught the attacker's wrist, twisted it sharply, and the knife clattered to the pavement. Before the man could react, Marcus delivered a quick strike to his solar plexus, and he crumpled to the ground, gasping for air. The third man, the stocky one with the gun, was fumbling to pull his weapon from his waistband. His hands were shaking as he realized that his two companions had been taken down in less than 30 seconds by someone who looked like he should be coaching Little League, not fighting trained criminals. "Don't," Marcus said simply, his voice carrying absolute authority. The word wasn't shouted or threatening, but something in his tone made the gunman freeze completely. The businessman pressed himself against the building wall, staring at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. This wasn't the desperate intervention of a good Samaritan. This was something else entirely. Marcus took a step toward the man with the gun, and despite being armed, the attacker actually backed away. "You have two choices," Marcus continued, in the same calm voice. "You can put that gun down and walk away with your friends, or you can try to use it and see what happens next." The stocky man's eyes darted between Marcus and his two companions, who were slowly picking themselves up, off the ground. The tattooed man was holding his shoulder and wincing with pain, while the thin man was still struggling to catch his breath. "Who are you?" the gunman whispered, his weapon now pointing at the ground. Marcus tilted his head slightly as if considering the question. "I'm just a father who wants to have dinner with his daughter. But you three decided to make that complicated." From behind the parked car, Emma watched in amazement as her dad handled the three dangerous men like it was the most natural thing in the world. She had never seen him move like that, had never heard him speak with such quiet command. Her father worked construction, fixed her broken toys, and made pancakes on Sunday mornings. This person who looked like her dad was someone entirely different. The tattooed man struggled to his feet, cradling his injured arm. "This isn't over," he muttered, but there was no real fight left in his voice. "Yes, it is," Marcus replied. "Take your friends and leave. If I see any of you near this gentleman again, or if you even think about coming back to this area, you won't like what happens next." The three men exchanged glances and something passed between them. They had come here expecting to intimidate a wealthy businessman into paying them money. Instead, they had run into something they didn't understand and couldn't handle. As they retreated toward their sedan, the thin man turned back. "You have no idea who you just messed with," he called out. Marcus watched them drive away before turning to the businessman, who was still pressed against the building wall, his expensive suit wrinkled and his face pale. "Are you hurt?" Marcus asked, his voice returning to the gentle tone he used with Emma. The man shook his head slowly, but his eyes never left Marcus's face. "I'm fine, but you... How did you do that? Who are you really?" Marcus glanced back toward where Emma was waiting, then looked at the businessman with a slight smile. "I told you, I'm just a dad." "Just a dad," the man repeated skeptically. "Just a dad who handles three armed criminals like he's done it 1,000 times before." Before Marcus could respond, Emma appeared at his side, having grown tired of waiting, behind the car. She looked up at him with a mixture of pride and confusion. "Dad, that was amazing," she said, her voice filled with awe. I didn't know you could fight like that. Marcus knelt down to her level, checking her over to make sure she was okay. Sometimes people need help, sweetheart. It's important to do the right thing. The businessman approached them cautiously, still trying to process what he had just witnessed. I don't know how to thank you, he said. They were going to rob me, possibly worse. You saved my life. Marcus stood up, taking Emma's hand again. No thanks necessary. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, the businessman said firmly. They wouldn't have. And they couldn't have, even if they tried. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. My name is Richard Harrison. I'm the CEO of Harrison Industries. Please let me do something to repay you. Marcus looked at the card but didn't take it. That's not necessary, Mr. Harrison. We should get going. But Richard Harrison wasn't giving up that easily. Something about what he had just witnessed was bothering him, tugging at a memory he couldn't quite place. The way Marcus had moved, the precision of his actions, the complete control he had maintained throughout the entire confrontation. Wait, Harrison called as Marcus and Emma started to walk away. Have we met before? There's something familiar. About you. Marcus paused, his hand tightening slightly on Emma's. For just a moment, something flickered across his face, a shadow of recognition or perhaps concern. I don't think so, Marcus said carefully. I'm sure I would remember meeting a CEO. But as they walked away, Richard Harrison stood on the sidewalk, staring after them with growing certainty that he had just encountered someone from his past, someone who was supposed to be dead. Richard Harrison couldn't sleep that night. He sat in his home office, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk, staring at the security footage from his building's cameras that his head of security had sent him. The video clearly showed the fight. But what disturbed him most was how familiar the man's movements looked. He opened his laptop and began searching through old files, documents he hadn't looked at in over 12 years. His hands trembled slightly as he navigated through folder after folder of classified information from his previous life, before he became a CEO, when he worked for a very different kind of organization. Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus sat at his small kitchen table after putting Emma to bed. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the old refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. He stared at his hands that had moved tonight with skills he thought he had buried forever. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Dad, I can't sleep. I keep thinking about what happened tonight. Marcus opened his arms and she climbed onto his lap, curling up against his chest like she used to when she was smaller. What you saw tonight, Marcus began carefully. It's not something we should talk about with other people, okay? Emma looked up at him with serious eyes. Because it's a secret? Something like that, Marcus said, stroking her hair. Sometimes grown-ups have parts of their lives that are complicated. What matters is that we're safe and we helped someone who needed it. Were you a superhero before you were my dad? Emma asked innocently. The question hit Marcus harder than any punch he had taken in years. No, sweetheart, I'm just your dad. That's the most important job I've ever had. But as Emma fell asleep in his arms, Marcus knew that his carefully constructed new life was beginning to unravel. He had been Marcus Thompson, construction worker and single father, for 8 years. Before that, he had been someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. Someone who was supposed to be dead. The next morning, Richard Harrison arrived at his office early and immediately called his head of security, James Mitchell, a former military man who had worked with intelligence agencies for decades. I need you to find out everything you can about the man who helped me last night, Harrison said, sliding a printed screenshot from the security footage across his desk. Mitchell studied the image carefully. Standard background check, or do you want me to dig deeper? Deeper, Harrison said without hesitation. Much deeper. Start with the name Marcus Thompson, but don't stop there. Something tells me that's not his real name. You think he's running from something? Harrison leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with possibilities he hoped were wrong. I think he might be running from someone, specifically from me. By afternoon, Mitchell had preliminary results that made both men's blood run cold. Marcus Thompson had appeared in the system 8 years ago with a completely clean background. Too clean. No childhood records, no school transcripts, no employment history before that date. It was the kind of identity that cost a lot of money and required connections in very dark places. This is a professional job, Mitchell explained. Whoever created this identity knew what they were doing, but they made one mistake. What's that? The address where Marcus Thompson first appeared is 3 blocks from a safe house that used to be operated by a program called Project Nightfall. Harrison's face went white. Project Nightfall was a classified government program that had been shut down 12 years ago amid scandal and bloodshed. It had been designed to create the perfect covert operatives, agents who could disappear into civilian life and be activated when needed. Harrison knew about it because he had been one of the program's coordinators. "Run facial recognition against Project Nightfall files," Harrison ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. An hour later, Mitchell returned with a file that Harrison had hoped never to see again. The photograph showed a younger man with shorter hair and colder eyes, but the face was unmistakably the same person who had saved his life the night before. Agent David Reeves. Mitchell read from the file. Real name classified. Age approximately 35. Specialized in close combat and tactical infiltration. Status: killed in action 12 years ago during the program shutdown. Harrison closed his eyes, remembering that terrible night when everything had gone wrong. Project Nightfall had been shut down not because it failed, but because it had succeeded too well. The agents they had created were too skilled, too independent, too dangerous to control. The decision had been made to eliminate them all before they could become a threat. David Reeves had been one of the best. Harrison remembered giving the order for his termination personally, watching on satellite feed as Reeves's safe house was destroyed in what looked like a gas explosion. They had never found a body, but the building had been completely destroyed. Everyone assumed he had died in the blast. He survived, Harrison whispered. Somehow he survived and disappeared. What do you want to do? Mitchell asked. We could have him picked up quietly. Harrison thought about Emma, the little girl who had looked at her father with such love and admiration. He thought about how Marcus had risked his life to save a Bao. Stranger how he had tried to walk away without recognition or reward. Nothing, Harrison said finally. We do nothing. Sir? David Reeves is dead, has been for 12 years. Marcus Thompson is just a single father who helped someone in trouble. Harrison stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the city where somewhere, a man who should have been his enemy was probably helping his daughter with homework. But Harrison's noble intentions would soon be tested, because the 3 men Marcus had fought the night before had connections of their own. They had recognized something familiar in Marcus's fighting style, and they were making phone calls to people who had been looking for David Reeves for a very long time. The past was about to collide with the present in ways that would endanger everything Marcus had built, especially the safety of the one person who mattered most to him in the world. 3 days after the confrontation, Marcus was walking Emma to school when he noticed the black SUV following them. His trained eyes caught the vehicle in his peripheral vision, staying exactly 2 blocks behind as they made their way down the familiar street. He had been expecting this moment for 8 years, hoping it would never come but knowing it probably would. Emma, he said casually, how about we take a different route to school today? I want to show you something. Emma, who was busy practicing spelling words out loud, just nodded and continued reciting. Beautiful. Beautiful. Dad, why do some letters not sound like they're supposed to? Marcus smiled despite the danger closing in around them. English is complicated, sweetheart, just like life. He led them through a series of turns that any normal person would think were random, but which allowed him to confirm his suspicions. The SUV stayed with them, maintaining its distance, but never losing sight of their position. There was also a second vehicle now, a gray sedan that had joined the surveillance. At Emma's school, Marcus knelt down to give her a hug, holding her a little longer than usual. I want you to listen very carefully, he said softly. If anyone you don't know tries to talk to you today, you go straight to Mrs. Henderson and tell her to call me immediately. Don't go anywhere with anyone, even if they say they know me. Can you promise me that? Emma's face became serious. She had heard this tone from her father before, usually when they had to move to a new apartment, or when strangers asked too many questions about their life. "Are we going to have to move again, Dad?" she asked quietly. The question broke Marcus's heart. Emma had lived in 7 different cities before they settled here, never staying anywhere long enough to make real friends. He had thought they were finally safe, that he had buried David Reeves deep enough that no one would ever find them. "I hope not, baby. But if we do, it'll be an adventure, right? Just you and me against the world?" Emma forced a smile and nodded, but Marcus could see the worry in her eyes. She was getting older, starting to understand that their life wasn't normal, that other kids didn't have fathers who taught them how to recognize if someone was following them or what to do if strangers approached. After dropping Emma at school, Marcus didn't go home. Instead, he took a circuitous route through the city, using every counter-surveillance technique he remembered. The black SUV and gray sedan stayed with him, but now he could see there were more vehicles involved. This wasn't a simple shakedown or revenge plot from the men he had fought. This was a professional operation. He found himself at the construction site where he used to work, a half-finished office building surrounded by chain-link fence. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was returning to the place where he had tried so hard to be normal, to be just another working man with calloused hands and an honest job. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Come alone to Pier 47 at noon. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Marcus looked at his watch. It was already 11:30. He had just enough time to make one important phone call. Richard Harrison was in the middle of a board meeting when his assistant knocked on the conference room door. "Sir, there's an urgent call for you. The man says it's about the other night." Harrison's blood went cold. He excused himself from the meeting and took the call in his private office. "Mr. Harrison, this is Marcus Thompson. We met 3 nights ago." "Yes, I remember. Is everything all right?" There was a pause, and Harrison could hear city traffic in the background. "No, sir, it's not. I think we both know why I'm calling." Harrison closed his eyes. "Where are you?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that some people have figured out who I used to be, and that puts my daughter in danger. I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If something happens to me, make sure Emma is safe. She's 8 years old. She goes to Riverside Elementary. She doesn't know about any of this, and she doesn't deserve to pay for my past." Harrison felt sick. "Nothing's going to happen to you. We can work this out." "No, sir, I don't think we can. Too many people died when Project Nightfall was shut down. Too many secrets were buried. Some people want revenge, and some people want those secrets to stay buried. Either way, I'm a loose end that needs to be tied up." "David," Harrison said, using his real name for the first time in 12 years, "let me help you. Come in and we can protect both of you." There was a long silence. "You know I can't do that, Richard. You know what they'll do to her just to get to me. The only way she stays safe is if I handle this myself." Harrison realized he was gripping the phone so hard his knuckles were white. "There has to be another way." "Maybe there is. But if there isn't, you owe me this much. You signed the order for my termination. You watched them try to kill me. The least you can do is make sure an innocent child doesn't pay for our mistakes." Before Harrison could respond, the line went dead. Marcus Thompson, who had once been David Reeves, walked toward Pier 47 with empty hands and a heavy heart. He had spent 8 years trying to be nothing more than a loving father. In 20 minutes, he might have to become a killer again to protect the life they had built together. Behind him, the surveillance vehicles followed at a distance, their occupants confident that they finally had their target exactly where they wanted him. What they didn't know was that David Reeves had spent 12 years planning for this day, and Marcus Thompson had spent 8 years learning what he was truly willing to die for. The final confrontation was about to begin, and this time there would be no walking away for anyone involved. Pier 47 stretched out into the harbor like a concrete finger pointing toward the gray water. The old shipping dock had been abandoned for years, its rusted cranes and empty warehouses creating perfect shadows for the kind of meeting that decent people never had to worry about. Marcus arrived 10 minutes early, not because he was eager, but because arriving early meant controlling the situation. He positioned himself with clear sightlines in all directions and easy access to cover if things went badly. Old habits from his previous life died hard. At exactly noon, a man in an expensive suit walked onto the pier alone, his hands visible and empty. Marcus recognized him immediately. Even though the last time they had seen each other, they had both been much younger, and the meeting had ended with gunfire. "Hello, David?" the man called out as he approached. "You look good for a dead man." "Agent Carter," Marcus replied, not moving from his position. "I heard you'd made it to the executive level. Congratulations." Thomas Carter had been Marcus's handler in Project Nightfall, the man who gave him assignments and debriefed him afterward. He was older now, his hair gray at the temples, but his eyes held the same cold intelligence that Marcus remembered. "You can't imagine how surprised I was to learn you were alive," Carter said, stopping about 10 feet away. "We all watched that building burn. The explosion was magnificent." "Sorry to disappoint you." Carter smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh, you haven't disappointed me, David. If anything, you've impressed me. 8 years living as a normal person, raising a child, working construction. It must have been quite an adjustment for someone with your particular skills." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the harbor wind. "How long have you known about you being alive?" "Only a few days. But I've been tracking unusual incidents that matched your combat profile for years. 3 men taken down in under 30 seconds without any weapons? That was definitely your signature style." "What do you want, Carter?" Carter began walking slowly around the pier, forcing Marcus to turn to keep him in sight. "The same thing I wanted 12 years ago. Your complete cooperation in serving your country's interests. I'm retired." "No, David, you went AWOL. There's a big difference." Carter stopped pacing and faced him directly. Project Nightfall wasn't shut down because it failed. It was shut down because people like you became too independent, too comfortable, making your own moral judgments about your missions. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. The same anger that had driven him to fake his own death and disappear. "You mean we started questioning orders to kill innocent people?" "I mean you started thinking you knew better than your superiors." Carter's voice hardened. "Do you remember your final assignment, David? The one you refused to complete?" Marcus remembered it perfectly. He had been ordered to eliminate a journalist who was investigating government contracts in Eastern Europe. The journalist had a wife and 2 young children. Marcus had refused the assignment and gone into hiding instead. "I remember a lot of things, Carter, including how you tried to have me killed for having a conscience. And look where that conscience got you. Living in poverty, working manual labor, constantly looking over your shoulder. Your daughter deserves better than that." The mention of Emma made Marcus's blood run cold. "She's not part of this. She became part of it the moment you decided to play house instead of following orders." Carter pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a photograph. It was Emma at her school, playing on the playground during recess. Marcus took a step forward, his hands clenching into fists. "If you touch her, relax, David. I'm not in the business of hurting children. But I am in the business of ensuring that valuable assets serve their intended purpose." Carter put the phone away. "You have skills that are still needed. Skills that could make the difference in operations that save American lives. Find someone else. There is no one else. Not with your particular combination of abilities and experience. You were the best operative Project Nightfall ever produced, and we both know it." Marcus stared out at the water, thinking about Emma's question from the night before. "Were you a superhero before you were my dad?" In a twisted way, maybe he had been. But superheroes in real life didn't get happy endings. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked finally. Carter smiled, sensing victory. "One assignment, clean, simple, completely deniable. A terrorist financier who's been funneling money to groups that target American civilians overseas. He's hiding in a compound that conventional forces can't touch without causing an international incident. And after this one assignment, you and Emma get new identities, better ones, a house in suburbia, college fund for the girl, maybe even a job that doesn't involve heavy lifting." Complete freedom to live whatever life you want. Marcus knew it was a lie. There would always be one more assignment, one more mission that only he could handle. But he also knew that refusing meant Emma would never be safe. They would spend the rest of their lives running, and eventually, their luck would run out. I need guarantees, Marcus said. Emma stays completely out of this. She gets protected until the mission is complete. Done. And I want it in writing, signed by someone with enough authority to make it stick. Carter nodded. I can arrange that. But David, understand this clearly. If you try to run again, if you disappear or refuse to complete the mission, the deal is off. And next time, we won't be so careful about collateral damage. Marcus looked back toward the city where Emma was probably in art class right now, creating colorful pictures with the innocence that he was about to destroy forever. He had tried to be Marcus Thompson, construction worker and loving father. But David Reeves, government assassin, was apparently who he would always be. When do we start? He asked quietly. Carter's smile was triumphant. Tomorrow. Pack light and say goodbye to the girl. You'll be gone for at least 2 weeks. As Carter walked away, Marcus stood alone on the pier, watching seagulls circle overhead. He had made a deal with the devil to protect his daughter, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just signed both their death warrants. The only question now was whether he could complete one final mission without losing the last pieces of his humanity in the process. That evening, Marcus sat at their small kitchen table helping Emma with her math homework, trying to memorize every detail of her face, the way she stuck her tongue out slightly when she concentrated, how her hair fell across her forehead when she leaned over her notebook, the sound of her laugh when she finally understood a problem that had been giving her trouble. "Dad, you're being weird," Emma said, looking up from her worksheet. "You keep staring at me." "Sorry, sweetheart. I was just thinking about how smart you are. Your mom would be so proud of you." Emma's expression softened. She rarely talked about her mother, who had died in a car accident when Emma was 3, but she treasured the few memories her father shared with her. "Tell me the story about when I was little and Mom taught me to dance in the kitchen," Emma said, abandoning her homework. Marcus smiled, though it felt like his heart was breaking. "You remember that one?" "Not really, but I like the way you tell it." So Marcus told her about Sarah, Emma's mother, who had been a nurse and the only person who ever made him believe he could be someone other than David Reeves. He told her about kitchen dancing and bedtime songs and how Sarah had made him promise to always put Emma first, no matter what happened. After Emma went to bed, Marcus packed a small bag with clothes and a few personal items. Then he made a phone call that he had hoped never to make. Richard Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, it's Marcus Thompson. I need that favor." There was a pause. "What kind of favor?" "I have to go away for a while. Emma needs somewhere safe to stay, someone who can protect her if things go wrong." Harrison's voice became urgent. "David, what have you gotten yourself into? The kind of situation that doesn't have a good solution. Can you help her or not?" "Of course, but there has to be another way." Marcus looked at Emma's bedroom door where she was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that her life was about to change forever. "Maybe there is. But I need you to promise me that if I don't come back, you'll make sure she has a real life, not hiding, not running, just a normal kid with a normal future." "You're coming back," Harrison said firmly. "Whatever this is, we can figure it out." "I hope so. But if I don't, her full name is Emma Sarah Thompson. Her birthday is March 15th. She likes vanilla ice cream and hates Brussels sprouts. She wants to be a teacher when she grows up because she thinks she can help people learn better." "David, stop, you're scaring me." Marcus laughed softly. "You know what's funny? 8 years ago, I would have taken this assignment without a second thought. I would have seen it as a chance to do what I was trained for. But now, all I can think about is whether I'll ever see her graduate from high school." The next morning, Marcus woke Emma up early and made her favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes shaped like butterflies. She ate them happily, chattering about a field trip her class was taking to the Science Museum. "Emma," Marcus said when she finished eating, "I need to tell you something important. I have to go away for work for a little while. Emma's face fell immediately. How long is a little while? Maybe 2 weeks, maybe a bit longer. But while I'm gone, you're going to stay with a very nice man named Mr. Harrison. He has a big house with a library full of books, and he's promised to take very good care of you. Emma pushed her plate away, her appetite suddenly gone. I don't want to stay with a stranger. I want to come with you. Marcus knelt beside her chair and took her small hands in his. I know, baby. But this is grown-up work, and it's not safe for little girls. Mr. Harrison helped me once, and now I'm going to help him with something important. Is this like when we had to move from Chicago really fast? Emma asked quietly. The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had hoped. She didn't remember that night 2 years ago when they had packed everything in 30 minutes and left their apartment forever. No, sweetheart, this is different. This time I'm choosing to go and I'm choosing to come back to you. That's a promise. An hour later, Richard Harrison arrived at their apartment driving a modest sedan instead of his usual corporate car. He was dressed in casual clothes and looked more like a suburban father than a CEO. When Emma met him, she hid behind Marcus's legs, suddenly shy. Emma, this is Mr. Harrison, Marcus said gently. He's the man I helped the other night, remember? Harrison knelt down to Emma's level, his voice kind and patient. Your dad is a very brave man, Emma. He helped me when I was in trouble, and now I want to help both of you. Do you have kids? Emma asked, still clinging to her father. I have a daughter, but she's all grown up now. She's a doctor in California. I think she would really like you. Over the next few minutes, Harrison patiently answered Emma's questions about his house, his job, and whether he had any pets. Marcus watched the interaction with growing relief. Whatever else Harrison had done in his past, he genuinely cared about Emma's well-being. When it was time to leave, Emma wrapped her arms around Marcus's neck and wouldn't let go. Promise you'll come back, she whispered in his ear. I promise, Marcus whispered back, hoping desperately that it wasn't a lie. As Harrison's car disappeared down the street with Emma waving from the back window, Marcus felt a part of his soul go with them. He had exactly 1 hour before Carter's. People picked him up for the mission. He spent that hour visiting Sarah's grave for the first time in 3 years. He sat beside the headstone and told his dead wife about their daughter's latest achievements, about the impossible situation he found himself in, and about how sorry he was for the life they were all living because of his past. I tried to be the man you wanted me to be, he said to the carved stone. I tried to just be Emma's dad and nothing else. But it wasn't enough. I have to be David Reeves one more time to keep her safe. When the black SUV arrived to collect him, Marcus Thompson climbed into the back seat. But the man who would step out at their destination would be someone else entirely, someone who had once been the most dangerous operative the government had ever created. The mission would take him to a compound in Eastern Europe, where he would face armed guards, sophisticated security systems, and a target who had killed dozens of innocent people. It should have been routine for someone with his skills. But as the vehicle drove toward the airport, Marcus realized that the most dangerous part of the mission wasn't the target or the security. It was the possibility that after 2 weeks of being David Reeves again, he might not remember how to be Emma's father. The man who had defeated 3 attackers to save a stranger was about to discover whether 8 years of love and fatherhood had made him stronger or weaker than the killer he used to be, and Emma's future, along with his own soul, would depend on the answer to that question. In Harrison's house across the city, Emma sat in a beautiful guest room surrounded by toys and books, staring out the window and counting the days until her father would come home. She didn't know that the man she called Dad was walking back into a world where good people sometimes had to do terrible things, and where promises to children were luxuries that not everyone could afford to keep. But Marcus had made that promise, and he intended to keep it, no matter what it cost him.